I'm really excited about today's episode. I'm joined by Ty Gipson, who does a lot of work around mindset, leadership, decision making, and overcoming adversity. And what I really love about this conversation today is that even though his work isn't just in sports, so much of what he talks about applies directly to athletes, especially when it comes to adversities, managing pressure, the decision making. So, we're going to dive into all that today and really break it down in a way that not only athletes can use, but everybody in general can use as well. So, Ty, you have had a rich history in business and overcoming adversity in your personal life as well. So, will you give the listeners some background on yourself and where you're at today?
Absolutely, George. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. In fact, as we just briefly spoke before we got started, I mean, life is full of ups and downs, right? As athletes, we fall. As uh, as business owners, we fall, and just as everyday life, we fall. So adversity is something we all deal with, and I'm glad to share mine. And I hope through this that we can help somebody, right? That's our goal, and I'm so excited to be here, and I love athletics, so this is even a passion for me. So I thank you for allowing me to do this. But yeah, I'm not gonna. I go back way back. I grew up out in Southeast Texas, and my dad was one of those that get up, boy, everything's gonna be okay. Don't nobody wants to hear your problems, dust off, kind of thing, right?
Right.
And I just grew up that way. But then, and I look back sometimes, and I think, man, that was a little bit, a little harsh sometimes. I thought, but when you really when I'm looking back at it now, what he was doing, and I had no idea at the time, but he was preparing me for a road ahead, right? And I think a lot of times some of our adversity is really just getting us ready for what's coming, right? And so I later on at the age of 8, I was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. And I'm gonna, Georgia, I'm going to expose my age a little bit because this was way back. I'm 56 years old, so I'm not young, but I was in the 70s. The technology was just way different than it is now, right? So,
So different.
and I had such brittle diabetes, but they put me on this machine that was a chemotherapy machine that they put insulin in, and they try they that let's see if we could help maybe work this through some diabetics and help regulate some of the blood sugars and things. It was a pound 9 ounces, and it's what we know today as the insulin pump, right? I was one of the early ones to be able to kind of the new modern insulin pump. I was able to kind of work through some of those things, and so over the years it got better. And it wasn't easy, but we had our challenges. We still had our ups and downs. I stayed in the hospital a lot just doing research. But one of the cool things through that is my parents never treated me any different. My dad was still that one to be all right. I played sports growing up. I was a baseball guy, but guy, I played everything, right? I mean, and I always did it, and I was hunting, fishing. It's just, I mean, what boys do, right? So they never treated me any different because of what I was going through or the insulin pump that was hanging off my side. I mean, I did it all. But then through the years, the insulin pump changes, and a lot of that stuff, right? Trying to deal with carrying around this pump in my pocket and all these different things. I was just wanting to fit in. I didn't want to deal with all that stuff. It was always so I never really said anything about it. Now people knew just because, but I never really shared because again, I was taught nobody wants to hear that stuff. Right. And then fast forward at the age of 30, just got extremely tired. And I went in and they said, "Hey, Ty, your kidneys are failing." And so come to find out, kind of fast forward, find out that it was my kidneys had completely just about failed. But they said, "You have such brittle diabetes, though. If we transplant a kidney, it's just going to go through a bunch of kidneys." And we thought, wow, okay. Well, that's not good. He said, "But there is a doctor in Baltimore that is doing this dual transplant where you get a kidney and a pancreas at the same time. And it's a really amazing surgery, but it is early on in it. And there's some research." He said, "But why don't you go out there and see if you could be a candidate for this?" So I did. Sure enough, I was. My mother, who was 60 at the time, said, "Taya, I know I'm 60, but," she said, "God's given us 2 kidneys and one of them's yours if the doctor says that it will work." And sure enough, my mother matched. So that was kind of cool. I was able to now, but what happens though, George, is you get on a list, right? Because I've got my mother's kidney ready, but as a pancreas, you got to wait on a deceased donor, right? So you can't just so I had to wait on a transplant list for something to happen, which is always a really hard time because you think about it. Somebody went through it. There was a tragedy for somebody for me to receive their organ, and I've never met the family, and but I'm always so thankful whoever made that decision.
And you were in Texas
I
waiting,
was in
right?
Texas, yes. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting on a waiting list in Texas. So I mean, we waited months and months on this, right? And so I'm in Texas where the transplant center is in Baltimore, Maryland. And so I'm still working and I'm trying to go through all this but I'm waiting on the call, right? Because you get when something happens, you got to get there.
You have to
And
hop on
so
the plane and
I
go.
mean, you get and go, right? You got a bag packed
Next
kind of thing.
flight, right,
I mean, you never know. It's kind of funny. I'd always be somewhere and I think, man, if I got the call right now, how would I get,
right.
you're always thinking that. But over the months, I got so tired because obviously your kidney just started wearing down, but I never had to go on dialysis, which was my blessing at that point in time in my life. I didn't have to do it because they always said if you go on dialysis, the rejection rate goes up higher, right? And so I stayed off and I stayed off as long as I can. But about the week before I went in and said, Doc, I can't. I'm exhausted. I can't hardly make it. I mean, I'm going to sleep at 6 in the evenings and just to try to make it through. And I go to work. I tried to work through the whole thing. And anyway, I got through it. So Super Bowl Sunday, 1999. I'm at home that night and it's about midnight. My phone rings and immediately I looked at it and I knew the area code on the phone. So my heart just started pumping because I knew. And here was why. They had 4 surgeries and 2 of them were not successful.
Mm,
So there was a risk, right? There was a risk, but I looked at it as, do I want to be able to live my life and not be on dialysis, because dialysis don't last forever. But also here was the key. I had a 6-year-old daughter.
mm,
And so I want to be here for her. And I thought I can't be here for her if I'm on dialysis. So I've got to take this shot, right? It's kind of that thing you got to make a decision. Do I want to take this route or not? And I did. I took the surgery and it was, so we got there, 16-hour surgery. I mean, we had the organ they were working in one room. They had me in the middle and they had my mother in the other room. And 16 hours later, I wake up, my mother's sitting beside me in a wheelchair. We got through the surgery great. I felt good. But here's the thing. I mean, your body has now received 2 organs and I'm taking all this medication. So you're I felt horrible, really.
yeah.
But over time, and they said, Ty, it's going to take a year. Just bear with us a year. And I did. I went through the year and I mean, it was hard. It was very hard. I was taking 65 pills a day,
A day?
a day.
I mean, were you working during this time, Ty?
I didn't for about 3 months. So
Okay.
about 3 months after the surgery, I just didn't. But then I went back. But I was taking 65 when I first came out. But then over time, they slowly kind of reduced that down. So now today, I still take 30 something pills a day. But it's way better than 65, right? So
Yeah.
that's good. And so I get through that. But here's where I want to talk about a little bit of adversity because this is where I love to we're all dealing with something as a business owner, as just a human, as an athlete. Every day we're dealing with something, pains, hurts. We got to get over this, right? But what I always say on the other side of that adversity, right? If we can push through on the other side of adversity, no matter how high that wall is, there is a light on the other side. And after I got through that surgery, I was able to get married. I was able to adopt another daughter, and I opened up a business. And so I always say, man, it was because of that, I was able to do those things, right? And a lot of times it may be a minor adversity, it may be a major adversity, whatever it looks like. But on the other side of that that injury, or on the other side of that, losing a key employee in your business, whatever that looks like, right? There is light. And I always encourage people to push through because it's very, very rewarding on the other side. Sometimes we can't see it because that wall's too high. But I just encourage, and when we talk about it, it's talking about mindset, right? Because our mind is so powerful. And I tell people all the time, we don't have to go out and get all this expensive. There's not a bunch of, there's not tools and things and all that. You have already what it takes to get over adversity, and that's your mind. I mean, I have a fifth, my youngest now that we adopted is 15, and we're in the middle of a soccer playoffs, right? And so we're in it. And so last night we got to really talk. She's a goalkeeper, sophomore year. She's a sophomore playing on varsity. So she's she's nervous, right? But she came in last night and she said, They've got a forward that's going to USC, it's committed to USC. I said, that's great. So, and she said, yeah, she's going to USC, that she's really good. I said, you know what? So are you, right? I mean, it's you got, and so what we talked about though was I had to encourage her that she go play your game and you're going to be fine. And I think that's life, right? Sometimes we just got to be reminded that we have everything we need
Mhm.
to get through what we have. I mean, we've been given these gifts to be able to get through them. And sometimes it obviously takes a lot of encouraging from parents and people like yourself that's doing some amazing things in the athletic world, to help people through it. But my point is we've got everyone has what it takes, whether you're an athlete or whether you're not. We have the tools. We just got to learn how to use them. And then so and the story gets better, Georgia. So I got to keep moving here. So I get through that, right? And I open the business, and I told you a little bit. I was able to finally do what I really love. I love athletics, and I'm a graphics guy. And I remember my dad growing up going, "Boy, what are you gonna do with graphics?" And I said, I have no idea. I have no idea, Dad, but I love it. I'm marketing, and so as I told you, I got to do some time at Disney, and I learned all that. But then I was able to come back and bring athletics and graphics together, which created this business that I have, and so I was able to do that. And that was one of the things after this adversity I was able to do. And so life is going on, but unfortunately, organs don't last forever, right? The pancreas that I received lasted for 12 years, which was amazing.
Is
My
that a
mother's
good is that, like, on average?
Yes, it's pretty average for a pancreas, and a pancreas means I didn't have diabetes for 12 years, which is really cool. So my body was, diabetes is so hard on the body, but not to have it, it was just it really gave my body some relief, I should say, right, from all the diabetic type stuff. So, but the kidney lasted for 20 years. My mother's kidney lasted for 20 years, which was absolutely amazing. And
During that time, because you knew they didn't last forever, was that a thought in the back of your mind? Like, did that, stop you from doing anything? Or would you say that rather, like, more motivated you to live your life fully and chase
God,
what you wanted?
George, I every day is a bonus day to me, but I was just so happy to be here, right? I mean, it makes you look at life so differently. I mean, in fact, when I got out of a couple years after surgery, somebody asked me, it was an interview they did, and they said, how did you see life before and you see it now? And I don't know where this came from, but I think it describes it perfectly. I said, I was living life in black and white, and now I'm living in full color. And I think that's so true because I mean, I tell you what, I live life to the fullest and I still to this day, I'm just excited every day to get up and go, what do we get to do today? Right. And so, yeah, it's been an absolute miracle in multiple ways through all this. But, so I own the business. We've grown this business. Now I've got, 45 plus employees. It's growing. My daughter's growing. I mean, everything's beautiful. Right. And my kidneys failed in 2019. Those, it lasted for 20 years. So 2019, my kidneys failed again, and I was just exhausted. But if you remember, my dad taught me not to, so a lot of my employees never knew I was going through these things, right? Because again, I was holding back. I just nobody wants to hear it. But I got put on dialysis. So
Mhm.
in 3 days a week, I would go from 4:30 to 9 and to dialysis. Then I'd go to the office and try to act like nothing's,
Work a
everything's
whole
good.
day.
It was wild. But I mean, and there were some that knew and there was some that didn't. But for the most part, nobody really knew to the extent what I was going through. And so we'd go through that. But I was at Crystal, my wife asked me, we went down to a family reunion during this time, and she said, Todd, there's something I know you don't like telling your story, but there's a lot of the extended family would love to hear your story. Do you mind telling them? I said, yeah, if they want to hear my problems, I'll be glad to tell them, and it's kind of that deal. And so I, uh, I tell them, and then on the way home, we're driving home, and I get like 4 or 5 texts from people, and they said, "Hey, thank you for sharing." I needed to hear that. One of them said, and there was 2 of them that said, "Hey, we're going to go sign up to be organ donors." And I thought, well, how selfish am I if I can really tell my story and help other people, right? So I was
Mhm.
kind of thinking, but my story with my dad, why would I do that? Why would I not share my story? And so I started talking more about it. But through this time, I'm in dialysis, and we get my sister's tested, and my sister's going to match to receive her kidney. So we're super excited. My mom, and then my kid, and then my sister's kidney. And so we're going through the tests and we get right up to the end and they come back and they told my sister that it's not a they don't think it's going to work.
Oh, no.
And so I was it was really kind of a setback for us, but anyway, we just had to, it's what's next, right? What's our next option? We're just going to keep we got to keep moving. And so my wife said, Ty, she said, I cannot sit here and watch you just kind of just fade because this dialysis is just really you can see it, just wearing you down and it was. I always tell people if you know somebody going through dialysis, say a prayer for them because that's a tough place. That's a hopeless place, really. Because you think about it, people are waiting there for organs, people to find organs, and it's just a really hard
Mhm.
place. And a lot of people never heard. I mean, I never knew about this stuff until I had to deal with it. So sometimes it's just good to let people know what's going on in those places. My wife goes in and she said, I'm going to just go donate my kidney. She thought she was a different blood type, right? Go donate her kidney to somebody. And then in return, it comes that somebody that matches me and I get their kidney and I get moved up on the list. So she goes in and I'm at work and she calls me and she is crying. And I'm like, what? I thought, man, did they get in a car? What happened? Right. And she says, Ty, she says, I match you perfectly. So 6 weeks later, I received my wife's kidney
Wow.
and here we are today, Georgia. And I'm telling you, I feel better today than I have ever in my life. And so on the other side of that wall, whatever it is y'all are dealing with, it's well worth the fight. Just another note here. Remember, I told you that 6-year-old daughter that I left that night,
Yes.
not sure. I got to walk her down the aisle 2 months ago.
Congratulations.
So it is worth the fight.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's kind of my story. And I'm sorry I was long winded, but I want people to understand, that life is full of this stuff. No matter where you're at. I mean, if you're in that athletic space or wherever, and athletes probably deal with even more. But I feel like it's more important. It's probably more important as an athlete because you're dealing with these aches and pains and injuries and having to overcome and behind in this and fighting for this starting position. All these things, right? Competing every day that have adversity. And you talking about we can go in and lift weights every day. We can run, we can train, we can do all that. But if you're not training your mind, you're missing the most powerful thing you have.
Right. It'll be impossible for those physical abilities to shine through if your mind isn't right.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Well, so how I've lots of questions for you, Ty.
Okay.
How important, because I know you had mentioned like seeing the light, right? Seeing these visions. How important is it that everybody who's going through some sort of adversity is one that hope aspect? Like, does there need to be hope? And what would you recommend? Like that they have something that they're working towards, that they're able to see something for themselves or focus on what they want? Because I feel like that was a big aspect of that for you that got you through.
It was, and I always, when I talk about this, I always say we got to be positive thinker. Well, positive thinker is such a broad statement.
Yeah.
It's just um, but I do think everybody needs their why, right? We all have our why, and we got to have that. We got to do that. But I did come up with like a 3-step mindset option that kind of talks about that. And what I do, Georgia, when I have adversity, I kind of look back on my own when I was going through this, and I said, what keeps me, what would get me through this stuff, right? Then now over time, I've gotten to really talk to a lot of these experts in the mind and how it works, and I really dove in. There's 3 steps that I go through. And that's and I tell people, write this down because this helps. This is not just if you're going through transplants and diabetes. This is life, right? I always ask myself when I run into something, am I going to grow or die in this situation, right? Am I going to get better or am I going to let this thing win, right? When I say die, I don't mean death. I mean, am I going to let my purpose, my goal, am I going to let that die, right? I mean, am I really going to give up on that? And that's what we do. Grow or die is what we do. Number 2 is hope or despair. And that's how we think. And when I say hope, I mean, are we being positive? Are we going to find for instance, I'm only taking 35 pills a day instead of 65. Find the positive. I
Right.
mean,
And I caught that. I was like, yep, I'm
yeah,
just taking 65 pills. Anything after that seems like a
that's right.
breeze.
Yes. So, I mean, find those things, right? Find the hope. Despair. Are we going to be the victim, right? Why did I have to have diabetes? Why did I have to have 3 transplants? Why? Right? I mean, why am I, am I down with an ankle injury and I can't train? Why this? Well, there's all these things you can, but you don't find the positive because that's how we think. Hope or despair is how we think. And the third is humor or drama.
Tell me about that one. I love that
And
one.
this is how we talk, right? Because what we don't realize is we're talking to ourselves all the time. We're telling ourselves, yes, we can do that. No, or no, there's no way I can get through that. There's no way I can get up at 6 a.m. and go do this before class. There's no way I can train that hard before. There's no way that I can do that for you're always talking to yourself, right? And so what I say is we've got to find the humor in it, right? And I'll tell you an example of mine. I would leave dialysis sometimes, and there was my wife who was worked in the business with me, and I mean we would be there, and sometimes they would be talking, and it'd be time for a meeting or something, and she'd say, "Well, Ty, you ought to be ready. You've been resting for the last 3 hours." We would joke, just little things. We're always joking about. I've got this great recliner that I get to hang out in and my buddies, I had friends at dialysis that, that we just be kind of, I would get up there and tell jokes, and I would, I was always the one kind of making, light of things, but I had to find something to get us through that. Right. And I had to find things. We're in probably one of the most hopeless places in the world, sitting in dialysis center where everybody's trying to hold on to their life. And I don't know if they get mad at me or not, but a lot of times I was over there telling jokes, or I would try to do things to just lighten up the room, you
Right.
know, and talking about like how we got the cleanest blood in town because I mean, it's stupid stuff. But sometimes as an athlete, sometimes we've got to dig deep too and just find the humor in what we're having to do. Right, man. This is you know, just find the little humor in it because that's how we talk to ourselves. What, believe it or not, if you're not, you're talking to yourself. And when you do the do, think, and talks, it's going to adjust your mind into a positive thinking mindset, and you don't even realize it.
Right. And it
Wow.
doesn't discredit how hard it is, right? But it helps
Yeah.
you get through it so much better. And
Right.
something that my uncle, he has dialysis and he's a warrior too. And him and my aunt, they don't let it stop them at all. Like
Yeah.
my brother's getting married in July. They go on vacation all the time and they just plan ahead, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this hospital is near, so we'll schedule it here. I mean, they're just living their life
That's right.
like normal, right? And something that you said that I tell my athletes is you were asking those why questions, like, why did this happen? Why this? Why that? Right. And sometimes you aren't going to know the why. And sometimes the why that's asking that question isn't going to be very helpful in the moment.
No.
It's going to leave you stuck in the past, dwelling, complaining. You might not know why for years down the road. Like for you, right? Like that this whole journey started when you were a little kid. And then now looking back, it's like, why this happened? Oh,
Yeah.
because I'm impacting so many others in a positive way with my story, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's not about why, but like what's next? What now? Like that question is so much more productive and moves you forward.
But George, I think I really believe that these adversities are there for. Without adversity, we wouldn't have success because it's really helping us get stronger, get better, and we're growing because of these adversities, right? That's how we grow. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If it was but then like you said, don't you can't find the start asking why thing because again, you never know why and sometimes you never will, but you do know if you go down that road, you're going down a negative path instead of a positive path, right? And it kind of goes back to that story, and you've probably heard it about the national cycle team coach that was brought into this national team, and he wanted his goal. They had never won a Tour de France, and his goal was to win a Tour de France in 5 years. But he came in and not and obviously he changed some of the training, he changed all this, but he said, "We're gonna start doing some of the little things." They changed this type of uniforms that they cycle in. They were more comfortable. The cyclists felt better in them. They changed the pillows that they slept on because they said they get a better night's sleep. And if they
Mm,
get a better night's sleep, they're prepared more for their training. Just the little things. And it talks about that it's kind of that 1% thing that we talk about, right? If we can just get 1% better every day. But those little things now, he did the little things, but he also did the training. But in 3 years, they won the Tour de France. And I don't say that's the only reason, but when you start paying attention to the little things. And we can't go, you don't go to the, and you as an athlete, we don't go to the gym and come back and go, wow, look at me. Look how good I look today. You do it over time. And it's the same way our mind works. If we continue to train our mind to think positive, to do the little things, find the little wins, and because it trains your neuropaths to start thinking that way, right? So that you start thinking, instead of your first thought being negative, your first thought is a positive.
And that takes time to practice that I don't think a lot of people realize. We naturally default to the negative, right? It
That's so true.
takes effort to find a different perspective.
It's absolutely, and it's just like, it takes time to develop muscles or working out, whatever that is, right? It's the same thing. Our mind is a muscle that we've got to continue to work out. And
Mm.
so many times, and athletes do it a lot, is they work so hard on the physical side and the training side, but we neglect our mind and our mindset. And that's in life in general. I think, I did. I mean, for the first 45 years of my life, I never even thought about it, right? I mean, I had my foot on the gas, right? What can we do? Go. And now, I realize, I mean, I've got to find time in the mornings or whenever that is for somebody to really put some thought and work on your mindset. And it really, I'm telling you, it's amazing. It does some amazing things.
And something that you said earlier that really stood out to me is you were able to find gratitude now, and for every day, it's like a bonus day, right? Like, I'm just excited to be here.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I see this miraculous shift in my athletes who have injuries, right? And whether it's they're out for 2 weeks or out for a year, like with a major
Yeah.
ACL tear,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But what happens with them is typically before this, especially if they're coming to me, there's usually a lot of fear of failure. Like, I don't wanna mess up. I don't wanna disappoint other people, let other people down. And then they go through this injury and they come back and none of that fear is there anymore. It's like, you know what? I'm just happy to be able to play again. I will never play with any sort of fear again. And, I always tell them, I'm like, I don't know if that would have happened in you unless this injury came, right? I think injuries always teach us something very important that if you didn't have it, I don't know if you would have ever gotten that opportunity to work on patience or resilience,
Right.
right? Let's see, the uncertainty teaches us things that certainty could never.
Well, and I think too, like you talked about an ACL injury and that type of stuff. When they come, you're right. Those things and it sounds crazy, but these things are making, as I said earlier, making them stronger. And like you said, when they come back on that field, they now have a new appreciation for being on that field. They probably have another gear because they're excited to be there, and this is an opportunity that they know is not just given. I mean, they work to be there. And I've got a great story. My niece was a soccer player and played Division 1 soccer, and we talk about mindset all the time. And she says this all the time to me. She says that her being an athlete helped her so much from a mindset standpoint in her career. She went into the legal world, but she says, as in that world, we compete all the time, right? And she's like, oh my gosh, she said, if I wouldn't have gone through athletics and the mindset that I was taught as an athlete, I don't know that I would have ever really achieved what I have achieved in this world. So not only overcoming injuries, but as athletes, you learn a mindset that's going to help you down the road for years. And
Oh, yeah. It's so transferable. All
yes,
of these skills, right? You get knocked down on the soccer field, well, you get right back up and you go get the ball back, right?
that's so true. And
Yeah.
I mean, we get knocked down in life every day, right? I mean,
It's very
it's just
symbolic.
so much it's a similarity, but I think it's how we look at it, right? And just like the way I mentioned, the way I look at life, if you look at that just each day that you're glad to be here and you're so thankful to be an athlete for first of all, I mean, that's an elite group of people that are playing that level of sports, first of all. So what an amazing gift that each of these athletes have been given, but to be playing at that level. And then to be able to learn from all of this, right? And again, that's what I think sometimes we got to slow down sometimes and think about what we're being taught that's preparing us for the road ahead. Just like me, looking back now at that 8-year old or when I was my dad, who I thought was just being ornery and an old Texas type guy that was just telling me to not, no, not dust it off, it'll be okay. But it really was preparing me for my road ahead. And so as an athlete, whatever you're going through, it's worth the fight, but it's not just right now. It's teaching you and preparing you for things ahead,
Something much greater.
much greater.
So, Ty, I know we've been saying a lot of good things that athletes can take into consideration here, but for them to better work on their mindset, is there anything else that you would recommend them starting to work on? Like, I know we talked about trying to find perspective and being more aware of what you're saying to yourself. Are there
Mhm.
any other little things, like even just like talking to family, that will help them work on their mindset and mentality, just in
Well,
life and sports?
I'll tell you this. This is I write goals down. I've always been hey, I've got goals. People ask, I got goals. Like, yeah, I've got goals. I'll write them. But here's the thing with goals in our mind is not only do we have goals, we want to write them down. And when we write them down, I always say get detailed with it. Don't put a general, I want to, I want to do this. Get more specific with your goals, right? Dive deeper into your goals. And then not once you write them down, then visualize those goals. I have found, and this is one of the things that some of the experts in the mind have really helped me with, is visualizing these, right? Think about them. Think about what that looks like. What does that look like if my goal is to be a Division 1 baseball player? What does that look like if I'm in high school? What is it? Visualize yourself playing on that Division 1 field. Visualize yourself in that uniform, whatever it is, right? But you gotta start visualizing your goals. And what happens is your mind starts to create these habits and you start to think that way. And it creates these getting into the deep of the way the mind works, but the mind doesn't know the difference between a thought and a reality.
Mhm.
And so when you start to visualize it, it's starting to create these patterns that you're going to start thinking like that and start moving in that way. And so I always say write your goals down and then go through them and think about them. Just almost have fun with it. Like what does that look like? And then, I sit out back here at my home and in the mornings and I kind of think for my goals today, what are they going to look like? What is today? And I thought about my daughter's game tonight. I just go through some visualizations, you know, uh, kind of things that I think will help. And I would encourage goals, depending on how you're doing them. Write them down, and then get more specific with them, and then visualize them.
And
And
that's something that everybody can do, right?
everybody,
Everybody can write down some goals, set some intentions, whether it's daily, monthly, whatever it is. You can start visualizing, just daydreaming about those good things. We can all be finding some more gratitude in
right,
our day-to-day lives, right? Because yeah, if
right,
you want to be a Division 1 baseball player, but you're telling yourself, "Oh, I suck and don't strike out." I don't know if that's the kind of mindset that's
yeah.
going to get you there, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I can't do that. I don't think I could do that. Look how good they are.
Right.
Those are things that's going back again to you're talking. That's that talk.
Mhm.
You're telling yourself that. And guess what? You're starting to think that way. And that's where you've got to get yourself visualizing that you can play there. And guess what? You got to remember this things too. Division 1 players, Hall of Fame baseball players, strike out 70% or they get out 70% of the time. They're not all these, perfect athletes. They're failing just like you are. And athletes are going to fail at all levels. So don't think just because you're failing at whatever level you're at right now that you're not able to get there because
Right.
it's happening at all different levels. Again, visualize it. That's what to answer your question, long winded, visualization of your goals.
Yeah, and I would say fear and doubt, from what I see on a day-to-day basis, fear and doubt crush more dreams than failure does, because like you're saying, failure happens literally every single day for all of us, right? We all have that in common, but what we don't have in common is how we're responding, how we're thinking about.
Well, like, and I know there's a book out there called Failing Forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's you gotta think about it that way, right? We're failing, but we're keep moving forward. You get up and you keep moving.
What's next? What
What's
now?
next? What is next? And again, we're just glad to be here, right? It's how it's all perspective, right? You gotta and you put your mindset in that realm, and you use your talents and not let your mind slow that your God-given talents down, because as an athlete, you've got a lot of gifts you've been given,
Right.
and you just don't let your motor, run out of gas, for lack of a better word, because you're not feeding it.
Mhm. Yep. God gave you those for a reason, wants you to
That's
use
right.
them, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That is so true. So
Yeah.
true.
So at times we wrap up here, will you summarize just your no options mindset again for us and offer just any last words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Absolutely. I first of all, just I want people to remember we have what it takes, right? I mean, um, and it doesn't matter who we're talking to, anybody in this audience that's listening has the tool. Just go look in the mirror and go, sometimes you got to talk to yourself and go, I can make this happen. I'm going to make this happen and I will make it happen. But again, and then, so think about that, right? Just remember you have everything. We don't need to, there's nothing out there that you don't have that you need right at this moment to get started.
Right. They're built in you already.
Bill, yeah, we were given those tools. So, but the other, again, I'm going to real quick go, grow or die is what we do. We're right. We're going to make that. Hope or despair is how we think, and humor or drama is how we talk. So those three steps will align us into a positive thinking mind. So that's those 1% steps, those small things. But do think and talk. Think about that, because those are things that I really believe if we can just think, take small steps, you'll be amazed what's going to happen over a week, a month, years, and go on. It's just like training, right? It's just like working out. Again, we go work out one time and we quit. Well, we're not going to continue to grow. The mind's the same way. We got to keep doing something. Time to work with your mind, and sometimes it's just a quiet place. Sometimes it's just I mean, I sit outside with my dogs in the morning, and we have, they play, and I get to think, right? And let's just find your spot. But I would encourage each and everyone to find that spot and just think about what they want to achieve, how they're going to achieve it, and again, write them down, visualize them, and move forward. But I highly encourage you guys to continue what you're doing. You guys, remember, it's just every day's a gift to us, right? We live in a tough world, and I always say, just be thankful for where we're at, what you've been given, because you guys are amazing people. Athletes are just amazing people with some amazing talents, and a lot of people are looking up to each and one of the athletes because of that. And I just encourage you to continue your fight. You look at any successful athlete, there has been a road of adversity behind them.
Oh, nobody has ever made it to the top without something.
No, no. And I was just talking to a business owner the other day, and he's like, "Man, it seems like that guy just gets so lucky." And I said, "You know what? Behind luck is a lot of hard
Oh,
work."
yeah. It's not
I
just
mean,
luck. You had to
no,
set yourself up. Even if it
that's right.
was lucky, you set yourself up for that luck.
Well, as you know, the volleyball player that's able to get up and get over the net, that's not just luck. They worked very hard to do that. I mean, they've worked on their skills. The 3-point shooters, those people have put in hours. It's not just luck. And so continue to work hard, because hard working people seem to get lucky.
Ty, thank you just so much for your valuable perspective and for sharing your story with us. And I know you do a lot of public speaking. So if listeners want to find you, where can they find you and reach out to you?
Yeah, I am. It's on tygipson.com, and that's TYGIPSON. And on that site, I mean, I've got all my, I got my podcast, I've got all that on there. But I also have a website. I mean, I have my website there, but I have my email and my phone number. And that phone number is my cell number. I always say, call me if I could help anybody, because that's really why I do what I do, is I just want to try to help. But if I can help anyone, or if there's a group that I can speak to, or that I feel like I could help, I would love to do that as well.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ty, for coming on the Rude Sports Psychology Show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.